The elevator cable snapped at exactly 11:47 p.m., and in the 15 seconds it took for the emergency brakes to catch, Dr. Sophia Chen's world turned upside down. The violent jolt threw her against the steel walls of the executive elevator, her 7-month pregnant belly taking the brunt of the impact. When the grinding metal finally stopped screaming and the emergency lights flickered on, she was crumpled on the floor, blood pooling beneath her, her breath coming in sharp, desperate gasps. 2 floors below, in the sterile corridors of Chen Industries' 42nd floor, Marcus Rivera was emptying trash bins and trying not to think about the custody hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. He was just another invisible man in a blue janitor's uniform, someone the billion-dollar pharmaceutical empire's executives walked past without seeing. They had no idea that the hands now gripping a mop handle had once performed emergency surgery in a field hospital in Afghanistan, or that the man they called simply Rivera had been Dr. Marcus Rivera, trauma surgeon, before his daughter's leukemia diagnosis had changed everything. If you're already hooked by this story of hidden strength and life-or-death moments, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The emergency alarm pierced the midnight silence like a scream. Marcus froze, his hand still on the cleaning cart, as the sound echoed through the empty hallways of Chen Industries' corporate headquarters. Emergency alarms at this hour usually meant one thing: someone was trapped in the executive elevator that serviced the top floors where the company's most sensitive research took place. Marcus had worked the midnight shift at Chen Industries for 3 years, ever since he'd walked away from surgery and everything that defined him as a doctor. Most nights the building was a tomb of glass and steel, inhabited only by security guards and the handful of cleaning crew who kept the pharmaceutical giant's empire spotless. Tonight felt different. Tonight the alarm carried an urgency that made his chest tighten, with memories he'd spent years trying to suppress. He should have waited for building security to handle it. That was protocol. That was what Marcus Rivera, the janitor, was supposed to do. But Dr. Marcus Rivera, the man who'd saved lives in places where death was a constant companion, couldn't ignore the sound of someone in distress. Sophia Chen was dying. The CEO of Chen Industries, the woman whose company had revolutionized cancer treatment and saved thousands of lives, was trapped between the 39th and 40th floors with internal bleeding that was getting worse by the minute. At 34, she'd built a pharmaceutical empire worth $18 billion. She'd survived hostile takeovers, patent wars, and the brutal world of corporate medicine. But she'd never faced anything like this. The elevator crash had triggered premature labor, and now she was hemorrhaging. Her phone had no signal in the steel box that had become her prison. The emergency call button was dead, damaged in the impact. She pressed her hands against her swollen belly, feeling her daughter's movements growing weaker, and tried to stay conscious as the world grew dim around her. Sophia had always believed in control. Control over her company, her research, her carefully planned life. She'd scheduled the cesarean section for exactly 36 weeks, when her daughter would be safe and when it wouldn't interfere with the FDA approval meeting that would determine the fate of her latest cancer drug. She'd calculated everything perfectly, except for the possibility that a maintenance oversight on a 20-year-old elevator cable might steal that control away. 3 floors below, Marcus stood at the elevator bank, staring at the floor indicator that showed the executive elevator stuck between floors. The maintenance elevator was his only way up, but using it would mean abandoning his post, potentially losing the job that paid for his daughter Lily's medical treatments. At 8 years old, Lily was in remission from acute lymphoblastic leukemia, but the follow-up treatments, the monthly checkups, the specialized medications, they all depended on the insurance that came with his steady employment. He thought about the custody hearing tomorrow morning, about how his ex-wife's lawyers would portray him. "Your Honor, Mr. Rivera gave up a lucrative medical career and now works as a janitor. How can he provide stability for a child who requires ongoing medical care?" They weren't wrong. He had given up everything, but they didn't understand why. The memory hit him like it always did, sudden and sharp. Lily, age 5, lying in a hospital bed while he was 3,000 miles away, performing surgery on a patient whose name he'd never learned. His phone had buzzed with texts from his wife, increasingly desperate. "Lily's fever won't break. She's asking for Daddy. Marcus, I need you here, now." He'd finished the surgery because that's what doctors do. They don't leave patients on the table. But by the time he'd caught the next flight home, Lily had been unconscious for 6 hours. The pediatric oncologist who'd become their lifeline, Dr. Amanda Foster, had pulled him aside with words that still echoed in his dreams. "She'll be okay this time, but Marcus, she needs to know that when she's fighting for her life, her father will be in the room, not in an operating room across the country." The day Lily came home from the hospital, Marcus had submitted his resignation from the trauma surgery program. Dr. Foster had tried to talk him out of it, had offered to help him find a position at a local hospital, something with more predictable hours. But Marcus had learned that predictable wasn't enough. Lily needed him present, not just available. She needed a father who came home every night at the same time, who never missed a treatment, who could read the signs of infection or fatigue that might mean a trip to the emergency room. The janitor position at Chen Industries wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. Midnight to 8 a.m., Monday through Friday. Health insurance that covered Lily's treatments. A salary that, while modest, paid for their small apartment in a good school district. Most importantly, it meant he was home every day when Lily got back from school, home for every doctor's appointment, home for every scared middle-of-the-night moment when her imagination turned every sniffle into something worse. Now, standing in front of the elevator bank with the emergency alarm growing louder, Marcus felt the old tension between duty and love. Someone was trapped. Someone might be dying. But helping meant risking everything he'd built for Lily. The decision was made for him when he heard the sound, faint but unmistakable through the elevator shaft. A woman's voice, weak and calling for help. And underneath it, something that made his blood run cold. The wet, labored breathing of someone losing blood fast. Marcus hit the button for the maintenance elevator. The ride up seemed to take forever. Marcus used the time to inventory the supplies in his cleaning cart, nothing useful for a medical emergency. The maintenance elevator finally stopped at the 40th floor, and he could hear more clearly now. Irregular breathing, possible shock, and something else that made his surgeon's training kick into high gear. Maternal distress. The executive elevator was visible through a small maintenance panel, and what Marcus saw made his hands steady for the first time in 3 years. Dr. Sophia Chen, though he only knew her from the company newsletters and the portrait hanging in the lobby, was unconscious on the elevator floor. Even through the small window he could see the signs. Pallor, the way her body was positioned to protect her abdomen, the dark stain spreading beneath her that could only be blood. She was pregnant, and she was dying. Marcus's medical training took over with the precision of muscle memory. He assessed what he could see. 3rd trimester pregnancy, obvious trauma, hemorrhaging, unconscious but still breathing. The elevator appeared to be stuck about 4 feet below the 40th floor, too high to reach from the maintenance shaft, too low for her to climb out even if she were conscious. He needed to get to her, and he needed to do it now. Marcus had always carried his trauma surgery skills like a weight. They'd saved lives in Afghanistan, but they'd also cost him his marriage when Sarah couldn't handle the unpredictable hours and constant deployment. They'd made him an exceptional surgeon, but they'd also meant missing Lily's first steps, her first day of school, her first hospitalization. Tonight, for the first time in 3 years, those skills might be exactly what someone needed. The maintenance access to the elevator shaft was behind a locked panel that Marcus opened with his master key. The drop down to the elevator roof was manageable, maybe 8 feet. But once he was down there, he'd be committed. If building security found him, if he couldn't help her, if something went wrong, he'd lose everything. Lily would lose her medical coverage. The custody hearing would be over before it started. Sophia stirred, and Marcus heard her voice clearly now. "Help me, please. Something's wrong with my baby." The words cut through every hesitation. Marcus lowered himself through the maintenance hatch and dropped onto the elevator roof. The emergency exit was already open, standard protocol when the elevator stopped unexpectedly. He dropped down into the car and knelt beside Sophia Chen, his hands moving with the efficiency of someone who'd triaged trauma patients in war zones. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Marcus said, his voice calm and professional. "My name is Marcus. I'm here to help you." Sophia's eyes fluttered open, struggling to focus. "The baby," she whispered. I think something's wrong." Marcus was already performing a rapid assessment. Pulse thready but present. Breathing shallow but regular. Obvious abdominal distress. Blood loss significant but not immediately life-threatening. And most critically, a 34-week pregnant woman who'd experienced trauma and was showing signs of placental abruption. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice steady while his mind raced through the complications. "Sophia, Dr. Sophia Chen." Her voice was stronger now, responding to the calm authority in his tone. Are you a doctor?" Marcus hesitated for just a moment. "I have medical training. Can you tell me what happened?" "The elevator dropped. Hit something hard. I think the cables." She winced, pressing her hands to her abdomen. "The pain started right after, and the bleeding." Marcus nodded, his worst fears confirmed. Placental abruption following trauma. In a hospital, it would be an emergency requiring immediate surgery. Here, trapped in an elevator shaft 40 floors above the ground, it was potentially fatal for both mother and child. "Dr. Chen, I need to examine you to understand what's happening. Is that okay?" Sophia nodded, and Marcus began the assessment he'd hoped he'd never have to perform again. His hands moved gently but efficiently, checking for external injuries, assessing the bleeding, monitoring her pulse. What he found made his stomach drop. Sophia was in the early stages of shock from blood loss. Her abdomen was rigid with internal bleeding. Most critically, the fetal heart rate he could detect through palpation was irregular and weakening. Without immediate intervention, both lives were at risk. Marcus had been in this situation before, but never without a surgical team, never without proper equipment, and never with so much personal cost hanging in the balance. In Afghanistan, he'd performed emergency cesarean sections in field hospitals under gunfire. But that was Dr. Marcus Rivera, trauma surgeon. This was Marcus Rivera, single father and janitor, who had everything to lose. "How bad is it?" Sophia asked, her CEO instincts still sharp despite her condition. Marcus met her eyes, and in that moment, he made the choice that would change everything. "It's serious, but I can help you. I need to call 911 first, and then I'm going to do everything I can to keep you and your baby safe until help arrives." As Marcus reached for his phone, he thought about Lily, asleep at home, trusting that her father would always make the right choice. He thought about the custody hearing, about the job that kept them afloat, about the careful balance he'd built over 3 years. And then he looked at Sophia Chen, brilliant and accomplished and dying, carrying a child who deserved the same chance at life that Lily had been given. Sometimes the right choice is the one that costs everything. Marcus dialed 911 with one hand while continuing to monitor Sophia's condition with the other. "This is Dr. Marcus Rivera at Chen Industries, 40th floor. I need emergency obstetric surgery support for a 34-week pregnant woman with suspected placental abruption following elevator trauma. Patient is Dr. Sophia Chen. ETA needs to be immediate." The dispatcher's voice crackled through. "Did you say Dr. Rivera? Are you medical personnel on site?" Marcus looked down at his janitor's uniform, then at Sophia's pale face. "Yes, I'm a trauma surgeon, and we're running out of time." The paramedics arrived 18 minutes later, but those 18 minutes changed everything. Marcus had kept Sophia conscious through sheer force of will and medical expertise that he'd thought was buried forever. When the elevator doors were finally pried open and the emergency team flooded in, they found Dr. Sophia Chen stable, alert, and very much alive, along with a janitor whose hands were steady and whose voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who'd saved lives before. "Patient is 34 weeks pregnant, suspected grade 2 placental abruption following blunt abdominal trauma," Marcus reported to the lead paramedic with the crisp efficiency of a trauma surgeon. "Blood pressure is holding at 90/60, pulse 110, fetal heart rate irregular but present. I've controlled the external bleeding and maintained her airway. She needs immediate transport for emergency cesarean." The paramedic, a veteran named Jake Morrison, looked from Marcus to his janitor's uniform and back again. "You medical personnel?" "I have surgical experience," Marcus said simply, stepping back to let them work. As they loaded Sophia onto the stretcher, she reached for Marcus's hand. "You saved us," she whispered, her eyes finding his in the harsh emergency lighting. "Both of us. I don't even know your name." "Marcus Rivera," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "You're going to be fine. Both of you." "Marcus Rivera," Sophia repeated, committing it to memory even as the morphine the paramedics had given her began to take effect. "I won't forget." As the elevator doors closed and the stretcher disappeared toward the stairs, Marcus stood alone in the hallway, his janitor's uniform stained with blood, his hands trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. In the distance, he could hear sirens wailing as the ambulance carried Sophia toward the hospital where, in a few hours, emergency surgery would save both her life and her daughter's. Marcus looked at his watch. 12:43 a.m. His shift wasn't over for another 7 hours, but he knew his time at Chen Industries was finished. By morning, word would spread about the janitor who'd performed emergency medical care on the CEO. There would be questions he couldn't answer without revealing a past he'd walked away from. HR would want documentation, certifications, explanations for why a trained surgeon was mopping floors. If you're hooked on this story of hidden talents and life-changing moments, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. He pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Patterson, his elderly neighbor who watched Lily during his night shifts. "Marcus, is everything all right? It's so late." "Everything's fine," he said, though it wasn't true. "I just wanted to check on Lily. She's been asleep for hours, had a good day at school, finished her homework without complaining. She asked if you'd be home in time to make her pancakes for breakfast." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Tell her yes, and Mrs. Patterson, thank you for everything." "Marcus, you sound strange. Are you sure you're all right?" "I'll see you in the morning," he said, ending the call before his voice could break. Marcus Rivera had been running from his past for 3 years, but tonight it had caught up with him in an elevator shaft 40 floors above the city. As he walked back toward his cleaning cart, he thought about the day that had changed everything, the day he'd chosen his daughter over his career and never looked back. 3 years earlier, Dr. Marcus Rivera had been the youngest trauma surgeon ever appointed to the staff at Mercy General Hospital. At 31, he'd already performed over 200 life-saving surgeries and earned a reputation as someone who could pull patients back from the edge when everyone else had given up. His colleagues called him the miracle worker, and Marcus had believed he was invincible. Then Lily got sick. It started with fatigue. 5-year-old Lily, who normally bounced off the walls from morning until bedtime, began napping in the afternoons. Then came the bruises that appeared without cause, the fevers that spiked without warning. Sarah, his wife, had taken Lily to the pediatrician twice before the blood work came back with results that changed everything. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Marcus was in surgery when Sarah called with the diagnosis. He remembered the exact moment, 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, while he was removing a piece of shrapnel from a construction worker's chest. His phone had buzzed in his pocket, but he'd ignored it. Surgeons don't answer phones in the OR. By the time he'd finished the surgery and listened to Sarah's voicemail, Lily had already been admitted to the children's hospital. Her treatment had already begun. The most terrifying day of their lives had unfolded without him. "I needed you," Sarah had said when he finally arrived at the hospital 6 hours later. "Our daughter needed you, and you were nowhere to be found." Marcus had tried to explain the patient on his table, the critical nature of the surgery, the oath he'd taken to first do no harm. But Sarah's eyes had been cold with a hurt that went deeper than anger. "You save everyone else's children," she'd said quietly. "When will you save your own?" The treatment protocol for childhood leukemia was brutal but effective. 2.5 years of chemotherapy, radiation, countless hospitalizations. Marcus had tried to be present for all of it while maintaining his surgical schedule. He'd arranged coverage when he could, traded shifts, worked nights to be free during the day. But trauma surgery didn't follow a schedule. Emergencies happened when they happened, and people died when surgeons weren't there to save them. The breaking point came during Lily's maintenance phase, when she was 7 and the worst was supposed to be behind them. Marcus had been called in for an emergency, a multi-car accident with 4 critical patients. He'd kissed Lily goodbye at 2 a.m., promising to be home for her birthday party that afternoon. The surgery had taken 14 hours. 4 people lived because of Marcus's skill, but when he'd finally stumbled home at 6 p.m., Lily's party was over. She'd blown out her candles without him, opened her presents without him, celebrated turning 7 without the father who'd promised he'd never miss another important moment. Sarah had filed for divorce the next week. "I can't do this anymore," she'd said, her voice exhausted rather than angry. "Lily can't do this anymore. We need someone who can be present for our family, not just available when it's convenient." The custody battle that followed had been devastating. Sarah's lawyers painted Marcus as an absent father who prioritized his career over his child. They weren't wrong exactly, but they didn't understand the weight of the choice. Every patient Marcus saved was someone else's child, someone else's parent, someone else's irreplaceable piece of their family puzzle. But Lily was his puzzle piece, and he was losing her. The final hearing had been brutal. Sarah's attorney had presented evidence of every missed birthday, every school play Marcus hadn't attended, every night Lily had cried herself to sleep because Daddy was at the hospital again. Marcus's lawyer had tried to counter with his importance as a surgeon, the lives he saved, the income he provided. It hadn't mattered. "Mr. Rivera," the judge had said, "you're clearly dedicated to your profession and provide valuable service to the community, but this little girl needs a father, not a paycheck. Until you can demonstrate that you can prioritize your daughter's needs over your professional obligations, custody will remain with her mother." Marcus had been granted supervised visitation every other weekend, 2 days out of 14 with the most important person in his world. He'd quit surgery the next day. Marcus finished his rounds mechanically, his mind replaying the judge's words and the feel of Lily's small hand in his when she'd asked why Daddy couldn't live with them anymore. The custody hearing scheduled for this morning would determine whether the past 3 years of sacrifice had been enough to prove he'd changed. His phone rang at 4:17 a.m., unknown number. "Mr. Rivera, this is Dr. Amanda Foster from Children's Hospital. I hope I'm not calling too late." Marcus felt his world tilt. Dr. Foster had been Lily's primary oncologist during treatment. She only called when something was wrong. "Is Lily okay?" he asked, his voice barely steady. "Lily's fine," Dr. Foster said quickly. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. I just finished a consultation at University Hospital and I heard the most remarkable story. A janitor at Chen Industries saved Dr. Sophia Chen's life tonight, using advanced medical techniques. The attending surgeon said whoever it was had trauma surgery experience. The name was Marcus Rivera." Marcus leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. "Dr. Foster, I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything to me," she said gently. "Marcus, I've known you for 3 years. I've watched you give up everything for Lily, and I've seen how much happier and healthier she's become with you present in her life. But I've also seen you diminish yourself, as if being a good father means you can't also be the brilliant surgeon you once were." "I made my choice," Marcus said quietly. "You made a necessary choice," Dr. Foster corrected. "But it doesn't have to be permanent. Marcus, what you did tonight, saving a life with improvised resources under impossible conditions, that's not something you can just turn off. It's who you are." Marcus thought about Sophia Chen, about the moment when his surgical training had taken over and his hands had steadied for the first time in 3 years. "It doesn't matter. After tonight, I'll probably lose this job too." "Maybe," Dr. Foster said, "or maybe this is the universe telling you it's time to stop hiding. Marcus, there are ways to practice medicine that don't require 60-hour weeks and midnight emergencies. Pediatric surgery, for instance, scheduled procedures, regular hours, the chance to save children like Lily while still being the father she needs." Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with another call. The display showed Chen Industries, Executive Office. "Dr. Foster, I have to go," he said. "Think about what I said, Marcus. Don't let fear of the past keep you from the future you and Lily deserve." Marcus switched to the incoming call, expecting security or HR telling him to clear out his locker. Instead, he heard a weak but determined voice that he recognized immediately. "Marcus, this is Sophia Chen. I hope you don't mind. I got your number from building security. I had to call." "Dr. Chen," Marcus said, surprised. "How are you feeling? Is the baby—" "We're both fine," Sophia said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "Thanks to you. My daughter was born at 3:42 a.m., 4 pounds 8 ounces. Perfect APGAR scores. They're calling it a miracle that we both survived." Marcus felt a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying lift from his chest. "I'm so glad. What will you name her?" "Grace," Sophia said softly. "Grace Chen, because sometimes grace comes in the form of a stranger who refuses to walk away when someone needs help." There was a pause, and when Sophia spoke again, her voice was thoughtful. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. You're not just a janitor, are you?" Marcus closed his eyes. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not." "I thought so. The way you handled the emergency, the medical terminology you used, the confidence in your voice, that doesn't come from cleaning buildings." Sophia paused. "I did some research after the surgery. Dr. Marcus Rivera, formerly of Mercy General Hospital, one of the youngest trauma surgeons ever to receive the Excellence in Emergency Medicine Award. That was a long time ago, Marcus said. 3 years, Sophia corrected. Not long at all in medical terms. Marcus, why are you working as a janitor when you could be saving lives? Marcus thought about Lily, about the custody hearing in 4 hours, about the judge's words that had shaped 3 years of his life. Because I have a daughter who needs me to be present, not just available. Surgery meant I could never promise to be there when she needed me most. And that meant more to you than your career? It meant everything to me. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, I want to meet with you, today, if possible. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Dr. Chen, I appreciate the offer, but... Please, Sophia interrupted. You saved my life and my daughter's life. At least let me thank you properly, and maybe we can help each other. Marcus looked around the empty hallway where he'd spent 3 years of midnight shifts, where he'd found peace in honest work and the knowledge that he could always be home when Lily needed him. After tonight, that peace was gone. But maybe, just maybe, something better was beginning. All right, he said, but I have something important to handle this morning first. Of course. This afternoon, then? 2 o'clock at my office? I'll be there, Marcus said. As he hung up, Marcus realized that in 12 hours, he'd gone from being an invisible janitor to saving a life, to being summoned to the executive office of one of the most powerful women in pharmaceutical industry. But none of that mattered as much as the custody hearing that would determine whether he'd proven himself worthy of being Lily's full-time father. Marcus Rivera had spent 3 years running from his past. This morning he would find out if the man he'd become was strong enough to reclaim his future. The elevator doors opened and Marcus stepped inside for what might be the last time as a Chen Industries employee, but as the doors closed and the elevator began its descent, he wasn't thinking about endings. He was thinking about Lily's face when she saw him walk through their apartment door in time to make her pancakes for breakfast, just like he'd promised. Some promises, Marcus had learned, were worth keeping no matter what they cost. Marcus arrived at the family courthouse at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes before his custody hearing was scheduled to begin. He'd gone home, showered off the night's events, and put on his only suit, the same navy blue one he'd worn to his resignation meeting at Mercy General 3 years ago. Lily had already left for school, but not before giving him a hug that lasted longer than usual and whispering, "I love you, Daddy. See you after school?" "See you after school, Princess," he'd promised, though he had no idea if that would still be true after today. Sarah was already seated in the courtroom with her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Ms. Rodriguez, who specialized in custody cases. They'd been civil during the proceedings, but Marcus knew Sarah genuinely believed Lily would be better off living with her full-time. She'd remarried 6 months ago to David, a software engineer with predictable hours and a stable income. On paper, they could offer Lily everything Marcus couldn't: financial security, a 2-parent household, and a stepfather who would never be called away to save someone else's life. Judge Catherine Walsh entered the courtroom exactly at 9 a.m., the same judge who'd granted Sarah primary custody 3 years earlier. She was known for being fair but firm, and Marcus had spent countless nights wondering if she'd see the changes he'd made in his life, or only remember the absent father he used to be. "Mr. Rivera," Judge Walsh said, reviewing the file in front of her, "you're petitioning for joint custody of your daughter, Lily Rivera, age 8. I see from the court records that you've maintained consistent visitation and support payments for the past 3 years." "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus said, standing, "and I see you've changed professions since our last hearing, from trauma surgeon to janitorial services at Chen Industries." Marcus felt the familiar weight of judgment in the question. "Yes, Your Honor, I made that change to ensure I could be consistently present for my daughter's needs. Ms. Rodriguez stood. Your Honor, while we acknowledge Mr. Rivera's efforts to maintain contact with Lily, we question whether this dramatic career change demonstrates stability or simply an inability to manage professional responsibilities alongside parental duties. Marcus's attorney, Chen, no relation to Sophia, had prepared him for this attack. Your Honor, my client made a deliberate and sacrificial choice to prioritize his daughter's well-being over professional advancement. The evidence will show that this decision has resulted in measurably better outcomes for Lily's health, academic performance, and emotional stability. For the next hour, Marcus listened as both sides presented their cases. Sarah testified about the stability she could provide, the support system she and David had built, the opportunities Lily would have in their household. She wasn't cruel or vindictive. She genuinely believed she was fighting for what was best for their daughter. Then it was Marcus's turn. Mr. Rivera, Judge Walsh said, tell me about the past 3 years. What has changed? Marcus stood, his hands steady despite the weight of the moment. Your Honor, 3 years ago, I was a trauma surgeon who believed that saving lives was the most important thing I could do. I thought being a good father meant providing financial security and prestige. I was wrong. He glanced at Sarah, seeing a flicker of surprise in her eyes. When Lily was diagnosed with leukemia, I thought my medical knowledge would be enough. I thought I could save her through my career, through the connections and expertise that came with being a surgeon. But what she needed wasn't Dr. Rivera, she needed her daddy. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Judge Walsh a photo. This was taken last week at Lily's school science fair. She won first place for her project on how chemotherapy works. She's not just a leukemia survivor anymore. She's a healthy, happy 8-year-old who understands her own medical history and isn't afraid of it. He swiped to another photo. This is from her last oncology appointment. Clean bill of health, but she still gets nervous before these visits. I'm there for every single one, not because I have to be, but because she knows I will be. Judge Walsh studied the photos. Mr. Rivera, your employment records show you work midnight to 8 a.m. shifts. How does this schedule allow you to be present for Lily? I'm home every day when she gets out of school, Your Honor. I help with homework, attend parent-teacher conferences, take her to medical appointments, and I'm there for bedtime every night. Working nights means I never miss a school event or a moment when she needs me. Ms. Rodriguez stood again. Your Honor, we don't dispute that Mr. Rivera has been more present, but we question the long-term sustainability of this arrangement. What happens if he loses his current job? What career advancement opportunities exist in janitorial work? Can he provide for Lily's future educational needs on a janitor's salary? Marcus felt his chest tighten. The question he'd been dreading, the one that would force him to reveal what had happened just hours earlier. Your Honor, he said slowly, last night I was faced with a medical emergency at my workplace. The CEO of Chen Industries experienced a life-threatening complication during pregnancy and was trapped in an elevator. I used my medical training to stabilize her condition until paramedics arrived. The courtroom went quiet. Judge Walsh leaned forward. Go on. I saved her life and the life of her unborn daughter, not because I was trying to prove anything, but because I couldn't walk away from someone who needed help. Marcus paused. Your Honor, the past 3 years taught me that being a father means being present, but last night reminded me that being a man means using your gifts to serve others when they need it most. Sarah's attorney looked confused. Your Honor, we're not sure what relevance this has to... It has relevance, Marcus interrupted, because it made me realize that I don't have to choose between being a good father and using my medical training to help people. There are ways to practice medicine that don't require the unpredictable schedule of trauma surgery. Judge Walsh studied him carefully. "What are you saying, Mr. Rivera?" "I'm saying that for 3 years, I've proven I can prioritize my daughter's needs above my own ambition. Now I'd like the chance to show that I can do both, be the father Lily deserves, and contribute to the medical field in a way that doesn't compromise my commitment to her." Ms. Rodriguez stood. "Your Honor, this sounds like Mr. Rivera is planning another major career change. How can the court trust that this won't result in the same problems that led to the original custody arrangement?" Before Marcus could answer, the courtroom doors opened. John Chen turned and whispered urgently to Marcus, "Did you arrange for someone to come?" Marcus turned and felt his world shift. Dr. Sophia Chen walked into the courtroom, moving slowly but deliberately. She was pale but determined, dressed in a simple black dress and carrying a folder. "Your Honor," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding boardrooms, "I apologize for the interruption, but I have information relevant to this proceeding." Judge Walsh looked surprised. "Ma'am, this is a closed custody hearing. You can't just—" "Dr. Sophia Chen, CEO of Chen Industries," Sophia said, handing a card to the bailiff. "Mr. Rivera saved my life and the life of my newborn daughter last night. I believe his character and capabilities are directly relevant to these proceedings." Sarah stared at Marcus in shock. Ms. Rodriguez looked like she'd been hit by a truck. Judge Walsh studied the business card, then looked at Marcus. "Mr. Rivera, did you arrange for this witness to appear?" "No, Your Honor. I had no idea she would be here." "Your Honor," Sophia said, "may I approach? I have a formal offer of employment for Mr. Rivera that I believe addresses the court's concerns about his career stability and financial security." This was not part of any plan Marcus had imagined. He'd expected to fight for custody with nothing but his 3 years of proven reliability. Now Sophia Chen was standing in a family courtroom, somehow knowing exactly when and where to find him. Judge Walsh gestured for Sophia to approach the bench. The conversation was whispered, but Marcus could see the judge's eyebrows rise several times. Finally, Judge Walsh nodded and gestured for everyone to return to their seats. "Dr. Chen," the judge said, "you may address the court briefly regarding Mr. Rivera's character and professional capabilities." Sophia stood, and despite having given birth less than 12 hours earlier, she commanded the room with quiet authority. "Your Honor, at 11:47 last night, I experienced a life-threatening medical emergency. I was trapped in an elevator, hemorrhaging from placental abruption, going into premature labor. The standard emergency response time would have been too late." She paused, her eyes finding Marcus's. "Mr. Rivera, working as a janitor in our building, heard my distress. He could have waited for security, followed protocol, protected his job. Instead, he rappelled down an elevator shaft and performed emergency medical care that saved both my life and my daughter's life." Sarah was staring at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. "Your Honor," Sophia continued, "Mr. Rivera's medical intervention was performed with the skill of a trauma surgeon and the judgment of someone who understands that every life has value. When the paramedics arrived, they said his assessment and treatment were flawless." Judge Walsh nodded. "Dr. Chen, you mentioned an employment offer." Sophia opened her folder. "Chen Industries operates a corporate medical center, serving over 5,000 employees and their families. We need a director of emergency medical services, someone who can manage routine occupational health while being available for genuine emergencies. The position offers a salary of $140,000 annually, full health benefits, and most importantly, scheduled hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday." Marcus felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. Dr. Chen, The position, Sophia continued, would allow Mr. Rivera to use his medical training in a way that serves others, while maintaining the consistent schedule he's built with his daughter. It's not trauma surgery, it's preventive care, routine treatment, and emergency response within a controlled environment. Ms. Rodriguez looked stunned. Your Honor, this seems highly irregular. What seems irregular, Judge Walsh interrupted, is a trauma surgeon giving up his career to work night shifts as a janitor because he loves his daughter more than his professional status. What seems normal is a successful CEO recognizing talent and offering an opportunity that serves everyone's interests. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Rivera, do you accept Dr. Chen's offer? Marcus looked at Sarah, seeing something in her eyes he hadn't seen in years. Respect. He thought about Lily, about the science fair project where she'd explained chemotherapy to her classmates, with the confidence of a child who'd survived something terrible and come out stronger. He thought about the past 3 years of midnight shifts and careful budgeting and the constant fear that he'd never be enough. Your Honor, he said quietly, I accept the position, contingent on this court's decision about custody. My daughter's well-being remains my first priority. Judge Walsh smiled, the first time Marcus had seen her smile in any of their proceedings. Mr. Rivera, the court recognizes that you have spent 3 years proving that you can prioritize your child's needs over your own ambition. The employment opportunity presented today suggests that you may now be able to serve both your family and your calling without compromising either. She paused, reviewing her notes. Joint custody is granted, effective immediately. Lily will spend equal time with both parents, with the schedule to be determined by mutual agreement. Mr. Rivera, you've demonstrated that being a good father sometimes means sacrificing everything. Now you have the chance to show that sometimes the right opportunity allows you to have both. Marcus felt his knees go weak. Sarah was crying, not from anger, but from something that looked like relief. Ms. Rodriguez was packing her briefcase with the efficiency of someone who'd just lost a case she'd expected to win. As the courtroom cleared, Sarah approached Marcus. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. Not for the job offer, but for the past 3 years. Lily's been happier than I've ever seen her. She talks about you constantly, about how you're always there, how safe she feels. She paused. I was wrong to think that giving up surgery meant you were giving up on your dreams. You were just choosing better ones. Sophia waited until they were alone before approaching. I hope you don't mind the dramatic timing, she said with a tired smile. I may have asked my assistant to do some research into your background after our conversation this morning. Dr. Chen, why? Marcus asked. Why go to all this trouble for someone you barely know? Sophia looked down at the photo on her phone. Her newborn daughter, Grace, sleeping peacefully in the NICU. Because you saved our lives without thinking about what it would cost you. Because you spent 3 years proving that love is more important than ambition. And because my company needs someone who understands that healing isn't just about medical procedures, it's about being present when people need you most. She handed him a formal offer letter. The position starts Monday. If you're interested, 9 to 5, emergency response training for our security staff, routine occupational health, and the occasional actual emergency. Most importantly, you'll be home every night for dinner with Lily. Marcus stared at the letter, at the salary that was more than he'd ever imagined earning, in a job that would let him keep his promise to always be present for his daughter. Dr. Chen, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me, Sophia said. Just be the man you showed me you were last night. Be the father I hope I can be to Grace, and help other people the way you helped us. That evening, Marcus sat in his small apartment kitchen, making pancakes for Lily just like he'd promised. She was chattering excitedly about school, about the field trip next week, about the book she was reading. Normal 8-year-old concerns from a child who'd survived something extraordinary and was thriving because her father had chosen to be extraordinary too. "Daddy," Lily said, syrup running down her chin, "Mrs. Patterson told me you might have some big news." Marcus smiled, thinking about the custody papers in his briefcase, about the job offer that would change their lives, about the woman and baby who were alive because he'd chosen to act instead of walking away. "Well, Princess," he said, "how would you feel about spending more time with both Mommy and Daddy, and maybe moving to a bigger apartment?" Lily's eyes went wide. "Really? Both of you?" "Really. And Daddy got a new job too, a job where I help people who are sick, but I'm always home for dinner." Lily launched herself into his arms, pancakes forgotten. "Are you going to be a doctor again?" Marcus held his daughter tight, thinking about the journey that had brought them here, from the ambitious surgeon who'd missed too many moments, to the janitor who'd found peace in honest work, to the man who'd learned that sometimes the best way forward is to stop running from who you're meant to be. "Yeah, Princess," he said softly. "I'm going to be a doctor again, but this time I'm going to be your daddy first." 3 months later, Dr. Marcus Rivera stood in the Chen Industries medical center, reviewing the chart of an employee who'd come in for a routine physical. Through his office window, he could see the city skyline, including the building where he'd once worked as a janitor. It felt like another lifetime. His phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Dad, I got an A on my math test. See you at home for dinner." Marcus smiled, thinking about how simple happiness could be when you learn to choose the right priorities. His schedule was everything he'd dreamed of during those midnight shifts. Regular hours, meaningful work, and the promise that he'd always be home when his daughter needed him. The office door opened and Sophia Chen walked in, carrying 3-month-old Grace. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "but someone wanted to see her favorite doctor." Grace had grown into a healthy, beautiful baby who'd shown no lasting effects from her dramatic birth. Sophia had returned to work part-time, but she'd restructured her priorities in ways that would have surprised anyone who'd known the workaholic CEO from before. "How's our little miracle doing?" Marcus asked, taking Grace from her mother. "Perfect," Sophia said, watching her daughter grab Marcus's stethoscope with tiny hands. "Her pediatrician says she's developing exactly as she should. No complications, no delays. A completely normal, healthy 3-month-old. Marcus bounced Grace gently, remembering another little girl who'd fought for her life and won. "That's what we like to hear." "Marcus," Sophia said, her tone becoming more serious, "I wanted to talk to you about something. The board is considering expanding our medical program, adding a pediatric wing, maybe partnering with Children's Hospital for specialized care. Would you be interested in heading up that department?" Marcus thought about Dr. Foster's words from months ago, about finding ways to practice medicine that didn't require 60-hour weeks and midnight emergencies. Pediatric care, routine checkups, vaccinations, school physicals for employees' children, but also emergency response training, working with families dealing with chronic illnesses, the kind of medicine that helps children like Lily and their parents. Marcus looked down at Grace, then out the window at the city where thousands of families were struggling with the same balance he'd fought to find. "I'd like that," he said quietly. "I'd like that very much." Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story of hidden strength, second chances, and the power of choosing love over ambition, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story. That night, Marcus arrived home at exactly 5:47 p.m., just like he did every weekday. Lily was waiting at the kitchen table with her homework spread out, And Sarah was there too. She'd started joining them for dinner twice a week, something that would have been impossible during the angry years but felt natural now. "How was work, Dad?" Lily asked, the question that had become their daily ritual. "I helped some people today," Marcus said, hanging up his white coat and switching into dad mode. "And tonight, I get to help you with your science project." "The one about emergency medicine?" Lily asked excitedly. She'd chosen the topic herself, inspired by stories of how her father had once saved lives in impossible situations. "That's the one," Marcus said, thinking about how far they'd all traveled from the broken family they'd once been. As they worked together at the kitchen table, Lily explaining the circulatory system with 8-year-old enthusiasm, Sarah sharing stories from her own medical career as a nurse, Marcus quietly grateful for the ordinary miracle of being present. He realized that salvation sometimes comes disguised as loss. He'd lost his surgical career to save his relationship with his daughter. He'd lost his marriage but gained a friendship with his ex-wife. He'd lost his identity as Dr. Rivera and found something better as Lily's dad. And on one midnight shift in an elevator shaft, he'd found a way to be both the healer he was meant to be and the father his daughter needed. Sometimes the greatest rescue is the one you perform on yourself, by learning to choose love over fear, presence over prestige, and family over everything else the world says should matter more. Marcus Rivera had finally learned to save the life that mattered most, his own.